go.
Hi. I think we just have to say our names or whatever. Kira Santa Cruz, and then
Andrea Williams.
And then you want to tell them like
where you work?
Yeah.
Well, I work with Family Services of Northeast Wisconsin. We're a contractor of Outagamie County. My specific department does supervised visitation for clients, but we have several other departments within the company.
Okay, so the first question I have for you today is how was your childhood and how was that brought up?
I had a pretty good childhood, I guess. My parents got divorced when I was young. But altogether, I lived a pretty good life, I would say.
For education?
I went to school K through 12 in Neenah, and then I went to Fox Valley Tech in Appleton for a few years. I went for a few years for dental hygiene, and then I went for business management, but decided not to pursue either of those. So then I kind of just didn't get a degree in anything.
And why did you join the career?
I really liked this job because of the variety of clients I get to see every day. And we're kind of on the go always. It's not just like a sit down in an office kind of job. It's like we're always on the go, going to different places in the community, going to kids' schools, parents' houses. We do a lot of work with the department at the Outagamie County building. So there's just a lot of variety in this job, which I really like. I'm always on the go, which is nice.
And then how do you build a rapport with being in the career field? Like, how do you be able to build with clients, or how should I refer people?
I think, well, in my specific department, unfortunately, it's not really referred. We get referrals from social workers, guardian ad litems, attorneys, judges, different people of that sort that that parents have placement or custody battles that they're going through. So then we step in and get those referrals taken care of so we can provide our supervised visitation services. But in the company altogether, we get plenty of referrals for other things as well, like our SELF program. They help kids that are struggling educational-wise or just need a little bit extra help after school with emotional issues or social issues of that sort. So they kind of work hand in hand with what my program does. They're kind of always on the go in the community doing different things with the children. And a lot of our clients actually overlap within the departments, which is kind of cool because then the kids can get familiar faces from everyone at Family Services. We do have a lot of other different departments that I'm not very familiar with. I'm mostly familiar with what happens here in Appleton. But I know there are different services that we offer in different departments for families. I know I always see Family Services in counseling offices or schools. I feel like our name's basically anywhere. So yeah, any kind of services that families need for child placement or custody issues, they can come to us.
How do you know how long we've been on this for? I'm not paying attention to time. And then what is the success rate?
For our clients?
For the clients or the
Okay.
kids.
Like I said, we have a lot of different departments, so each department is different. I would say it definitely varies client to client. I don't have a specific number of what the success rate specifically is. But all in all, I would say that a majority of our clients, depending on their situation, are in and out of our door, it could be anywhere from like a month to 3 years. It really depends on the situation and who's all involved in it. But all in all, I think that the success, I mean, I think they're all successful in my eyes. I think that we really focus on the children and their what's in the best interest of them. So whether that be continuing foster placement or continuing, we have a lot of families that do supervised visitation, and then once they are reunited with their families, we still work with the children in our SELF program to kind of continue those services to make sure that the children are still doing everything that they can at home, that they were doing at the foster homes, to continue like to have emotional support and such like that. So I would say that overall our success rates are good. I mean, I hear more good than bad, I would say. I think, like I said, though, every case is different. Every family is different. Just depends on what everyone's situation is and the timeline of where the kid's at.
And then do you get along with everyone that you work with? And then why run it?
For the most part, yeah. I think, well, my coworkers in our department, we are always on the go. So we don't really see each other that much. But we all kind of share clientele and are able to like email and text, phone calls, communicate that way. As far as clients go, mostly clients are they're easy to get along with. They kind of know our role and what's expected of them. I think sometimes frustration comes about with clients, that, you know, if something isn't going their way per se that they're not agreeing with, I understand there's a lot of frustration with that sometimes. And although we're kind of like the middleman usually in between like the county versus our specific services, sometimes we're kind of like the punching bag in that sort, but it's usually not a factor. I mean, it's usually fine. We're usually able to work that out with the clients or the social workers or the guardian ad litems. But overall, yeah, I think everyone knows their role and where we're at, and I think for the most part, everyone gets along and you're able to communicate really well with each other.
Have you ever had a client that had a hard time like trying to get along with them, or they didn't agree with what you said and maybe got upset or things didn't go the way that they should have?
Yes, I've had, just in everyday life, there's always going to be clashing personalities. I think the main thing to remember, though, in my role is that what these clients, with these kids, with these parents are going through is really difficult. So trying to understand their point of view, I always try to do that, try to put myself in their shoes. Although we don't know the full stories of everybody's situation, but we try to have a good grasp on it so we can better understand them. But I have definitely been in situations where, parents aren't happy, or even children aren't happy. Children, they don't want to be at their foster homes, or they don't want to be at their biological parents' home, vice versa. I've definitely been in situations where people are just angry because it's an angry situation to be in. And always.
How have you been able to handle that when the children don't want to live at the family or the foster home?
So it's hard because, like I said, we don't really have a say in that per se. I mean, we document what we see, and then that goes on to the next person who makes the decisions. But in the moment, in our services, usually if the children are old enough to kind of speak on what they want or don't want, for visitation purposes, if the child is refusing to go with the parent, if they're 12, 13 years old, we'll try our best to get them to go, but then refusal is refusal at some point. But obviously if the child is younger and can't really speak for themselves, then we try our hardest to get them to go to the visit. Our main goal is to get reunified, children to get reunified with the parents. That's why we're here trying to do that.
Is there times that or children may not always go back home, and how do you work through that part?
I personally have never had a client. Either all my clients are still in the process of going through the supervised visitation and all of that with bio parents, or they have been slowly getting closer to reunification with their bio parents. I have not yet seen where a parent or a child has not gone back with the parent at all, like the cold turkey, like, no, you're never seeing your parents again. I've never really seen that before. But I mean, not to say it doesn't happen. That's not the usual, we're here to try to support the child and what they want. And usually that is being reunified with bio parents.
And then how do you de-escalate a individual or a situation? Like if it were to occur, how to, like if a parent were to get upset or there was an episode that were to happen, how do you de-escalate that?
We're always directed to, we've been trained and taught how to de-escalate those situations and make sure the child is, out of harm's way. Sometimes it's not always easy to do that though, so sometimes, we kind of have to separate, the adults from the child to try to get them apart from each other. Otherwise, there are situations when we just have to call law enforcement to step in when we're not able to control that, which I personally have never had to do, but I know that it's definitely happened before, and there's a lot of emotions that come with this. So
when you if law enforcement were to be called, how do you what is the role then? Is there protocols that need to be taken, or what are
so my understanding, let's say if I had called law enforcement because a parent physically was harming the child, I obviously would do my best to remove the child physically from that parent, but sometimes, depending on the situation, I also don't want to get myself injured or the child more injured.
Yeah.
So the law enforcement would come in, and at that point I would kind of step back and let them handle, because then at that point it's like criminal with the parent and the officers and whatnot. But my role then would be okay, here's law enforcement, now you kind of do your thing. So
and what if a situation that's already, and then what age group are typically the clients?
So our clients are parents, so usually of school age kids, but we range from, I have newborns to 13, 14-year-olds. Well, I shouldn't say 14-year-olds, not that many that old, but most of my clients are between the ages of infant to about 10 years old, I would say. But that can vary, with our self program. I think a lot of those are more school age kids that are more emotionally and socially development, and they're at those points where they need that interaction and help with their social skills. But most of my clients are obviously with the parents. Those are my clients, and then the children who, like I said, they range from infants, toddlers, school age.
And with
a variety.
With the children that are in, that you supervise, is it just the one child, or is it multiple that are
Yeah, it depends on the family in the case. I have cases where let's say there's 4 kids in the family. I may have, bio parents may have placement of 2 of those kids, and then I do visits with 2 of the other kids, and there's many different reasons for that. The list can go on and on of the reasoning. Otherwise, there's families where all the children are removed, placed in foster homes. It really just depends on the situation, but we have a wide variety of variations of children and their placement with bio or foster homes. So
with some of the children, what are some of the things that the children have to experience in order to be part of the program?
I will say that children do experience a lot of change. I think that they have a lot of workers coming in and out of their lives, per se. I think the county does a pretty good job of keeping foster homes consistent, so children don't really have to bounce, like, go one foster home and then, next month you're at a different foster home. They really try to keep that consistent, which is good. But I would say that I think, like, the hardest part on the children is just the seeing different faces all the time, kind of not knowing what's going to happen next, which obviously we just try to protect the children from that, of not knowing. That's more of, adult conversation, and children shouldn't really be involved in that. But I think change is the biggest thing, like, that the kids have to, kind of go through, which is hard.
So, like, with the children, are they, like, malnourished, or are they,
like, why are they
abused? Why are some of the kids, like, removed and placed into foster care or having to have services?
That all, it varies. Like, I've had cases where, children are being physically abused. I've had cases where the parents are homeless, so they cannot provide a home for the children. I've had cases where parents have straight up just said, essentially, I can't do this, so here you go. It honestly depends on the case. I don't think there's one case similar to the next. Like, they're all different of why there's, why CPS is involved, or why children are removed from the home.
What are you doing? And do you have any non-speaking English clients, and how do you communicate with those clients?
I've had one, and it was honestly a little bit difficult. The situation was that the visiting parent, we were in the home, and the visiting parent did not speak English. Or I should say, I think they spoke a little bit of English, but not very well. The children were bilingual, so they were able to understand English, and I believe it was Spanish that they were. I think it was English and Spanish. But there's an interpreter that can come in through the county that will help translate any important things, I guess, that the parents are saying to the children, or vice versa. This specific client, it was older children. They were teenagers, so it was a little bit easier. It does get a little bit harder when the kids are younger and, they can't really understand in general, so trying to, decipher between the different languages is a little bit difficult. But having that interpreter, kind of helped. We kind of just sat next to each other and wrote notes to each other of, like, hey, what did they say? Is it of importance, or was it, kind of just small talk things? But definitely makes the job hard, because that's, our biggest role in supervised visitation is documenting conversation and interaction. So when they don't speak, the same language as me, it is difficult, but there are resources out there that can step in and help, so that's good.
So have you ever found, like, yourself with being bilingual, with the parents being bilingual, have they ever said anything inappropriate to a child that you've found yourself in that situation?
No. Like I said, that was just that one client that I had that, and they were, a pretty well-mannered family. I haven't been in a situation like that, but I'm sure just as if, they were English speaking, I think we would probably handle it the same way. It just might be a little difficult to be, like, not, for sure knowing what they said, just going off of what the interpreter says, so, like, a third party. But no, I haven't really had any, like, negative encounters of bilingual.
And have you ever had a client on drugs or alcohol, and how do you handle that?
I will say that there are a lot of clients that we have that parents are either being charged, pending charges, have past charges of drug or alcohol abuse. And that's obviously something, each referral that we get is very client specific on what to watch out for during the visits. So yes, I have seen parents come to visits under the influence. Typically, if the child or children are not in danger, or the parent's not falling asleep, or doing anything that would be harmful to the child or the situation, then usually it's just documented. Parent, we can't assume because I obviously don't know for sure if the person is under the influence or not, but the way we document, we have to just say, clients was doing XYZ, and then from there we can kind of make the assumption that, given the past, they were probably under the influence. So yeah, I see that a lot, but like I said, if they're not harming the child or putting any danger in the situation, then there's no real rule that we have to, end the visit, or because there's a third, there's me there supervising what's going on. Obviously, if I was not there supervising, we wouldn't want a parent under the influence with taking care of a child. So, but since I'm there, that's just documented, and hopefully that parent can try to work through that so that doesn't happen again.
And have you ever had any parents that were incarcerated or any of that per se?
Yeah, we have a lot of clients that were incarcerated prior to having visitations. We have clients that get incarcerated during our services. So then we have to kind of wait for, court and whatnot to decide, what's going to go on with their trial, or their reasoning of why they're in court depends, or why they're incarcerated really depends too. We also do visits virtually with incarcerated individuals. So for example, there may be a client who has been incarcerated for 2 years, and they still want to be able to see their child, so we would physically go to the child, and we have an app that we can virtually, like a Zoom kind of thing, like video chat with the child and the parent that's incarcerated. So then we're still there supervising the communication between them. But yeah, the parent would be physically in jail, and the child would be with the visitation worker, and being able to talk to them over the phone. So those are kind of fun to see, just because when you're incarcerated, you don't really get to see the real world, so it's kind of nice to see the parent be able to see their child even though they are incarcerated.
And then has it ever made it tough to have the parent communicate with their child while being incarcerated, or have you ever had them a probation officer or anything like that stop by while you've done a visit?
I have not had that probation officer. I do sometimes. I am in contact with probation officers, or we kind of talk hand in hand about rules of certain clients or what they can and can't do. That kind of changes our expectations during visits. But as far as parents communicating while they're incarcerated, they're incarcerated, so nothing that they can. That's why I'm there, to kind of listen in, and if anything were to get out of hand of what they were saying, then obviously I would be there. But I've never had a client that is incarcerated, be inappropriate with the child, or
have you ever had to report anything to a probation officer or anything like
that? Not to a probation officer, no. I've had to many times make CPS reports. As weird as it sounds, even though I am technically a part of CPS, the process of it is still the same as if I was, a citizen out in the public and saw something that was abnormal. You would make that CPS report, and whether that be with, the client that you're working with or something outside that, I would have to follow the same procedure as, any other citizen would. Not just because I'm in the CPS role doesn't mean that I have any ins per se on how to make those reports.
Has it ever made it hard? After you made a report, has it ever made it hard to be able to still go in that home and still be able to communicate with that other person?
I don't think so, just because I know that what I'm doing is in the best interest of the child. A lot of those clients have since then been, either they don't have visits anymore, or fully removed, or the client's incarcerated, or what have you. But yeah, I don't think that I
Has it ever made it like harder for the person, like if they were like retaliated or got upset with you as far as like reporting?
Well, reporting is usually anonymous, so they don't, I mean, anybody can't really know who. I mean, people can obviously have a hunch on, oh, this person was over this day and now all of a sudden kind of thing, but I don't think so. I think some of like our clients are already working with either social workers or guardian ad litem, so they're kind of already have, you know, like an established relationship with someone to talk to. But like I said before, we're kind of like the third party, like the punching bag, so sometimes we get a lot of, you know, like if a client is mad at their worker, then they, you know, kind of take it out on us, which is, again, just part of the job. We always just refer them to their worker, because we're kind of listening to, you know, the worker's rules and expectations for the clients.
Have you ever seen a parent abuse a child, and how did you process through that situation?
I don't not physical abuse. I've never seen a parent, you know, physically abuse a child right in front of me during a visit. I have seen, though, abusive, I guess, like, I don't know how to explain it, like abusive mannerisms towards the children, whether it be, you know, talking inappropriately with the child, not feeding them the correct nutritious foods, you know, not changing, you know, if they're required to, or if they have a visit that's, you know, 3 hours long and they didn't once offer the child a snack or change a diaper or offer to go to the bathroom. Obviously, those are still reasons to, you know, assume that the parent is neglectful per se. But I've never seen straight, like, abuse towards a child. I would hope that a parent would know that, you know, there's a third party watching you, so that's why you're here. But, I mean, I'm sure it's definitely happened with other workers in different situations. Just me personally, I've never seen that.
And how is it to work with, like, other populations, like, as far as different cultures, or, like...
I love it. I think that it's super interesting, like I said earlier, that, my job, I'm always on the go working with a variety of people, which is really rewarding, honestly, to be able to, you know, kind of be there for these families, these children, to kind of coach them in parenting and, you know, kind of be their advocate of, like, hey, in order to reach your next goal, you know, this is what you should be doing or not doing. I really like the diversity of we do have a big diversity of clients that we work with and different ages. Every situation is different. So I think as much as, you know, people think about CPS or, you know, just like in general, like our name is kind of just, you always think of like, oh, that, you know, that parent was probably beating their kid, or that parent was not feeding them. You know, it's not always that. There's so much that goes on. Every client is different. Every child is different. So the overall population that I work with is just, there's a variety, and I really enjoy that. Makes my day go by fast, to be able to see different faces every day. But also I like that, you know, each week is kind of consistent. I get to make, you know, relationships with these families and these children, kind of be able to, like I said, like coach them on what to do and what not to do to, you know, hopefully get reunified.
Have you ever seen any child or like adult like prostituted, or maybe like homeless? Like, how does anything like that?
Oh, for sure. There we have clients who prostitution is definitely a thing. I haven't seen it personally within children, but with certain adult clients, parents, we've seen prostitution. Obviously, that would be something that would be addressed before we would, you know, discuss reunification of the children. I have not... I mean, a lot of it is kind of like we kind of go based on what clients want to tell us because we can't really assume anything. So we kind of just pick up on little things throughout, the time we spent with them that, would hint at the fact of prostitution or anything, illegal activities or anything like that.
What about like domestic violence? Have you ever?
Yeah, domestic violence is huge. We have, and before you said homeless, we have a lot of homeless clients. I have some clients that, that's their only, next step to get through is to, find stable housing for them and their children. So once you're at that point, then you're kind of at the end, once you find housing, you're good. Domestic violence is a factor. I think, I don't know, I don't have an exact number of how many clients I would say, or a percentage of how many clients have domestic violence on their record. I would say a lot of our clients, I shouldn't say a lot, a handful, a majority of our clients, our parents are split, and a handful of those clients, there is domestic violence in the past, or that's a problem. We even have clients where there's no contact orders between parents. We have parents that are, have full placement in custody of their child, and then the other parent just has the supervised visits, whether that be once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. And if there's no contact between the two parents, we're the worker that has to make sure that, visit exchanges, there's no contact between them, and we're kind of like the middleman of communication. So, yeah, domestic violence is definitely a thing that I see every day. Not firsthand, but I experience it with clients that have gone through it.
And have you ever had to like report on that before?
No. Usually when we get the referrals, it's kind of all laid out there of their kind of like their script of how the visits are going to go. So it'll tell us when Family Services gets a referral from like attorneys or social workers, it'll tell us what their situation is, if there's history of domestic violence or sexual abuse, physical abuse, kind of just like their whole synopsis of what their situation is. So they kind of already have been reported, unless it's something new or repeating. None of that really gets reported. Like if the child says, "Oh, my dad used to hit my mom" or whatever, that's why we're here kind of thing, is because, oh yes, there's domestic violence, and we just try to redirect those conversations with the child. But as far as reporting goes, I haven't had to do any domestic violence reporting or anything of that
Did
nature.
you have to ever deal with the drug force team or anything like that? Have you had squad team come in during a visit or?
No, I have not. I'm hopeful that parents are mindful of where they are and who they're with, that they won't bring illegal drugs or alcohol or anything, weapons of that to their visits. I know when we do supervised visits at the county building, they have to go through security to get up to the visit rooms, so they go through, they see officers on the way up, so I don't think they can really get through that. But when we have clients on the community, that's definitely a big thing for us, is the safety concern of, if they were to bring a weapon, if they were to bring illegal drugs, and how to go about that, would be to try to squash it there, say, that's not allowed, can you please put that away, and then if they don't listen, then as I said before, we would just have to call law enforcement to step in.
What is a tough age, I guess, that you have to work with?
That's a good question. I think I don't know, I would say the toughest, but also the easiest is when they're babies and they can't really talk. The easy part about that is the visits they don't talk really, so there's not much to document. But it's also difficult at the same time, because when they're at that age, they need care the most, I think. they need, diaper changes, they cry a lot, they need to be fed, they need to be interacted with, they sleep. So I think that's like the easiest but also the hardest age, because like I said, they can talk or they can't talk, but they're just so needy. They need their parent at that age. So, but then at the other point, when children can talk, it does get a little difficult, because then if they are, talking inappropriately with their children, then I would have to step in and kind of eliminate those conversations from happening. And sometimes that's difficult when, sometimes the child is the one that initiates that conversation of, hey, why are we in this situation? Or, hey, did, so-and-so said that you did this or you did that. And, as a parent, trying to answer those appropriately is sometimes difficult. And then as a worker, trying to, coach the parent into, hey, this is how you can respond appropriately. This is what you shouldn't say. Sometimes when they're like at, I would say between the ages of like 4 and 7 get a little difficult, because they don't really understand what's happening. So they ask a lot of questions. So that's, kind of hard to try to monitor the appropriateness of the conversation. So, but I don't think any age is easy.
How do you deal with that when they do ask like those kind of questions? Like, what is a coping or skill or whatever you need to use?
When the children ask those kind of questions?
Yeah.
I typically like to see how the parents respond to it. And if it's positive, I always, make sure that's documented, like parent, responded positively, said X, Y, Z. But if the parent, sometimes I have where the parent kind of looks at me like, what am I supposed to say? And then I'll kind of, step in and be like, hey, child, kind of redirect the conversation of, let's go play with this. Or it depends on their age. Or if they are at an age where you can kind of explain in an appropriate manner of why, sometimes I get, why are you here? Like, who are you? Like, what's your role? And trying to explain that in a manner that they understand but also is appropriate can be a little difficult. But I always try to let the parents first try, see what they're going to say, and always praise them for speaking, appropriately, but also if I need to step in, I'm always, willing to do that and help them out with what they should say.
And with the job, like, is there a lot of paperwork and a lot of documentation, I would assume?
Yes. So during our, when I'm providing supervised visitation services, every client is different. I have some clients where you have to be super hands-on, have to physically, follow them around and do, help them every step of the way. Then I have other clients who are a little bit more, the safety concerns aren't as high. So I can do a little bit more documenting on my work phone as we go, so I can kind of take, notes as the important things that happen during the visit. But we definitely work outside of our, when we're physically at visitation with clients. We have, different computer programs that we upload our documentation to. I'm always contacting, like I said, guardian ad litems and social workers about scheduling and, clients' concerns, child's concerns, foster parents' concerns. So there's really not a time that I don't have my work phone on me and I'm not working in some way. There is, I wouldn't say that there's like physical paperwork, a lot of that, but there's just a lot of, communication between a lot of different people at all times.
And like when you go in their house for like visitation and stuff like that, is there certain like heritages you have to follow, or like culture, like beliefs and stuff like that? Like if they have like, for like, I don't know, Native Americans, like they have like different cultures, different languages,
right?
Stuff
Different,
like that.
yeah. I haven't really experienced that. I mean, I'm only with them for a short amount of time in the day, or in the week, I should say. I mean, we definitely see a variety of cultures and heritages, but nothing that really, we have to change our ways of anything per se of how we, portray ourselves or whatever. I mean, there's nothing of that nature. There are definitely children who follow different, different religions, different cultural diversities and such as that, which we always try to support. Whatever that family chooses, that's, as long as it's safe for the child, and it's usually not an issue for us. But there hasn't really been anything that I've had to completely change to, accustom myself to a certain client's culture.
And then you said, like, you were kind of with the foster homes. With the foster homes, like, has there ever been an issue with foster homes? Or, like, I would say, has there ever been anything reported from a child that you would have to, like, report to the social worker, anything like that?
Yeah, there's definitely been conflicts. I think I will say that the majority of our foster homes are awesome. They're there to help the children, and they're volunteering to help in the time of need, no matter what the situation is. But there have been times when we've had to remove child from a certain foster home and place them elsewhere due to I've had where it's just not working. Parents or foster parents and children are just not. It's usually when the children are older, they have a voice, and they're just not getting along. But for the majority, we like I said before, we really try to keep structure and consistency with these children. So once they're placed in a foster home, we do everything we can to keep them there.
And then how do you deal with, like, as far as, like, with different children, if they're in different homes, how do you deal with that?
Like if they have bio siblings,
yeah,
and then they're separated.
Yep, and then, like, if are they all in the same visit? Can they be in different visits? And how does that all work?
It all depends on the client. I have clients that, brother and sister are removed but they're placed in different foster homes. Or I have clients that, all the children are removed, but they're all in the same foster home together. It really depends on a variety of things: the availability of foster homes, the conditions of the children, and what's, the expectations or the concerns with them. It really depends on the client. I have, usually with visits, I have it where visiting parent, if they have, one child removed and they have placement of another child, I have cases where that parent can bring the child that they have placement of with to the visits, and I have other cases where it's solely the parent having to go to the visit and no other siblings. But usually that's not the case, as we try to keep siblings together as much as possible. But like I said, every case is different. There's no case that's the same. So
has there ever been, like, a situation where, like, maybe a child was removed because of another child in the home?
Oh, like sibling rivalry almost, or like,
yeah.
That's a good question too. I honestly am not sure if I've heard of that. I know it's sometimes difficult after a child is removed. There can be some behavioral issues that come about, or that could also be the reason of why they're removed. But I haven't necessarily had issues with sibling abuse and that caused removal, but I'm sure it does happen. I just have not seen that firsthand.
So it's like, for children being removed, it's not always the parent. It would be like sometimes the child as well, or is it just mainly the parent that is the reason why the child was removed?
I would say the majority is that the parent is somehow not providing correctly for the child. But like I said, every case is different. That's just the majority of what I see, is that children are removed because of parenting or lack of.
So can some of these children, like, maybe where they're maybe malnourished or, like, starved pretty much to the fact that they're, like, underweight, or
yeah, that definitely happens. I've had clients where we kind of step in at the, like, worst point of it, where it's like, oh gosh, how did somebody not see this before? But thankfully, in all the cases that I've seen, children have been safe and been able to, got be brought up.
Has there ever been
a
point where maybe you've had to, or you or anyone else in the department have ever had to, pretty much like where a child almost passed away, or?
I've never had that. I think a lot of our cases, like I said, we kind of are already involved before that would even happen per se. But unfortunately, that it is out there. That does happen. There's plenty of, plenty of people out in the community that have custody or placement of their children that are being neglectful or abusive, that it just hasn't come to light. So that is unfortunately out there. It's just we don't always, the right people can't always see it at the right time.
So can you tell me a time like where it's been more stuff like maybe a dangerous situation or the worst situation that you've had to deal with, and how you kind of like went about dealing with that?
Sorry, can you repeat yourself? My work phone.
So can you tell me a time about like maybe where it's been like the dangerous situation or the worst situation that you had to deal with, and then like how did you kind of deal with that or go about like processing, or do you have like advice from like if I were to ever apply through the company, like how do you would be like a maybe tools or things you'd have to do in order to go through that?
Yeah.
If there's like a specific time that you've ever done.
Yeah. It's really hard. There's so much variety in my job that I feel like sometimes I'm like, oh, anybody could do this, but at the same time I'm like, this is a very mentally exhausting job. Some days are super rewarding and I get to see a lot of good. Other days are not so great. And so just trying to have, I think anybody in like this field, law enforcement, CPS, all of that nature, it's rewarding but also very straining and stressful mentally, emotionally, physically.
Do you have like skills that on those tough days that you walk out of the house, how do you deal with that when you have to bring it home? Like, is there...
Yeah, that's hard.
Like, something that you do, especially because then with having children and stuff like that yourself, how do you bring that home and have to cope with that?
I try, obviously everybody's situation is different, but me personally, I try to, take that time that is my drive home to de-escalate, whether that be, sometimes I sit in my car in silence, sometimes I blast the music, sometimes I call a friend, sometimes I call my husband. It really depends on what the situation is or what the day has brought. Every day is different. When you work in this field, you never know what the day's going to bring, kind of thing. I mean, you kind of have your planned out day of what your schedule looks like, but it's unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen. So when you get home from the day, you kind of have to mentally be like, okay, that just happened. Like you de-escalate in your own ways.
So how do you because obviously like it's private, so you can't go tell anybody. Right. So how do you keep that to yourself and be able to
it's
still
hard.
Be okay going home?
That's a really good question. It is difficult at times. But I think it's also almost like a good thing, because then there's boundaries that I can't go home and talk about this because I legally, laws or whatever, I can't talk about it. I mean, I can say a synopsis as, oh my gosh, this was so stressful because this person didn't show up for their visit, and then I had to bring the child, like general things like that. But obviously, like the specifics, we can't really talk about. So it's kind of nice because we can't talk about it. So it kind of just, makes ourselves have to focus on something else or talk about something else.
But then, doesn't it eventually build up inside, and then you eventually want to blow something?
It does, but it is also nice. That's working with who I work with. We have outlets within our company.
So do you guys have counseling services, or how do you
Not
what kind of services
not
are
for
given?
the employees. I mean, we offer counseling services through our company, but mostly for children. I mean, obviously, if I wanted to go see a therapist through my company, I could. But that's not something directly that's offered, like, hey, you get free, therapy because this job is stressful. Unfortunately, we don't get that. But, it definitely takes a certain personality to be in this field. Just knowing that, you never know what your day is going to bring and it's going to be stressful. I guess just kind of like having that mindset of going into your day, it kind of helps to know, like, okay, you gotta work through it today. That's the job, basically. So definitely takes a certain someone to be in this field.
And let's say like if a client ever became dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
how do you process through that as far as like, because obviously it's going to be more like triggering and
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be hard. So how do you?
Yeah. If I ever have like safety concerns, or any real problems like following a visit or during a visit, I always make sure to address them with their social worker, guardian ad litem. All in all, I mean, I think that a lot of that stems from, like I said before, like clients' frustrations of not necessarily towards me, but just the situation that they're in, because it is a very frustrating situation for everyone. But I think the best way for me to handle it is just, redirecting that client to the appropriate person that can help them. But like I said before too, I'm in my role, I'm usually a punching bag because I'm the person that clients see face to face, which is difficult. But I think for the most part, clients are understanding of not to be dangerous or be in have safety concerns during visits. I think that's
So has it ever been known to like have to have another person as far as like another worker?
Mm-hmm.
Just not like there's just not just the one worker, but maybe like have a backup just in case,
like during a visit. Yeah, we've definitely had clients where there's been multiple workers needed due to safety concerns of either the parent just mentally or physically cannot handle the amount of children or the amount of work that's being put into these children that they need. Or there could be what we call a flight risk, so potential of the parents leaving with the children, so essentially kidnapping them. Or, I mean, there's various reasons why we would need multiple workers, but for the majority of visits, it's usually just one worker assigned to each case.
And then with like the kids, if they don't want to go to a visit, how do you do that? Like I know before you said that sometimes you do encourage them, but you can't force them.
Right.
So how do you encourage them? Is there like a certain toolbox or like a toy that you kind of
I mean, we kind of try to, I don't want to say bribery, but try to remind them of like maybe the past visit that they had with their parent, of how they did a certain activity or ate a certain food or went to a certain place. I will say that I've only had I can count on one hand probably how many clients or kids that I've had that have actually physically not gone to the visit. Whenever I've been in a situation where they don't want to go, I'm usually able to talk them through it and kind of get them to want to go. And once they're there visiting, it's usually totally fine. I think just with all of the change happening in their life, I think the transition is sometimes difficult. Even leaving visits with the parents to go back to the foster home, sometimes that's difficult too. Just all the transitions and changes that they go through is just really hard on them sometimes.
So how do you deal with it if a parent does not show to a visit?
Good question. I get that a lot. We have kind of like our clients that we kind of know have a history of no call, no show, kind of like for work. Otherwise, sometimes, things happen, things come up, people get sick, people have to go out of town, people, life happens. So we try to give them in our company, our kind of rule is that we have a 15-minute late policy. So if our clients are 15 minutes or more late, then we go ahead and arrange transportation for the child, and the visit's then canceled. There are definitely though ways around, like if a parent's running late and they give me a call and say, hey, I got a flat tire on the way, I'm getting a ride, I'll be there. Obviously that's understandable. But when there's consistent parents that are just not showing up for their visits and not contacting us, then we usually look into removing visits in general, and then that puts those parents, steps behind and for all that they've worked for. So it's kind of a bummer, and then seeing the children, if they're old enough to have to tell them, oh, sorry, they're not, coming today. So
how do you react when the child is upset or sad because their parent did not show?
Yeah, that's really hard. We usually get the question of, where's mom or dad, or why didn't they come? And trying to come up with, ways to, it's definitely just like a situational thing I've had, it's like top of my head, whatever comes about. Obviously not trying to lie to the child or make excuses, but, give rational reasons of why, like, oh, maybe they just slept in today, they didn't hear their alarm, or they had to work late maybe, I'm not sure, like, obviously it depends on the age, and the situation of what's happening. If it's like a one-time thing, then you sincerely are like, I don't know where mom and dad are, and you're kind of concerned, like, where are they? Did something happen to them? But then, like I said, there's other, parents that it's kind of like clockwork where we're like, they're not going to show. But we do have clients that are required to what we call confirm their visit at a certain time in the day. So let's say, someone had a visit from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., and they had to confirm by 10 a.m. If they don't, confirm via phone call or text or email, whichever way, is their requirement, then the workers go ahead and cancel the visit and reach out to all the individuals in the situation. Otherwise, if, the client does confirm, obviously we go ahead and go through with the visit. We usually do that for clients that are either new to us, that we don't really have an established relationship with, so we're not really sure how it's going to go, or clients that tend to be not consistent with their visits, or clients that just have a big allotment of time that I don't want to say would waste the worker's time, but it would be a lot for the worker to drive an hour to go pick up the kid only for the parent not to show up, kind of thing. So every situation is different, but I like those cases where they have to confirm, because then kind of sets in stone, like, okay, we communicated today, we have a visit, it's on. But there are parents that confirm and then they still don't show up. So it's hard. It's hard for the kids, and it's hard for, the workers to try to come up with ways to try to comfort the children.
And when you're taking a child to the visit, is it like in town, or do you have to drive a certain amount of time to be able to bring that child to a visit?
It all depends on the cases. A lot of my cases, I provide or the worker provides transportation. I do have other cases where foster parents provide transportation. If one of the parents has custody or placement of the child, they can bring them. We do also have volunteer drivers that work, or they're contracted through us, that can do that. We have clients from Green Bay, Brillion, we have Kalkana, we have Oshkosh, we have clients like all over. But it's generally within, I would say like 30 to 45 minutes is the most I've ever had to drive. But yeah, usually the workers are the ones who transport the children to and from the visits, which is kind of nice, because then it kind of like gives the workers a time to talk with the child, build a relationship with them before or after the visit, to kind of get like, oh, how do you feel about that? What would you want to do differently next time? I really enjoy the time spent in the car with some of my clients, because after school, how is school? You just build like those routines with the kids, which is nice. And we even provide transportation for parents sometimes if they don't have a means of transportation. If they need to get picked up from work to go to the visit, we can do that. Or the county also provides gas cards to clients if they need to drive to visits, or bus passes if they don't have a vehicle. So transportation, we try to make it work for clients and the children whatever way we can.
We're done.
Good? All right.
How do you save this?
Push the red button.